Hi, everyone. We're going to give everyone one last minute to start to join, and we'll start exactly at 5 o'clock. But thank you so much for joining. Okay, I think we're ready to roll. Welcome to our conversation. Thanks, everyone, for joining on such short notice. We're here to discuss yesterday's news, which was the acquisition of GeneTx, the biotechnology company started by FAST, by Ultragenics Pharmaceuticals, which will now take over the clinical trial underway for GeneTx 102, an investigational ASO drug for the potential treatment of Angelman syndrome. My name is Alana Newhouse. I am the newest board member of FAST, having very recently joined. And what this means is that I'm able to act as a representative of the community itself. I'll be asking questions that we've gotten on various channels throughout the last 2 days. In conversation with me today are John Schlueter, chair of the board of FAST, Jessica Riviere, vice president of global patient advocacy and patient engagement at Ultragenics, and Allyson, Berent, chief science officer at FAST. Welcome, all three of you. Thank you so much for joining us. John, there are people in the AS community who are still unfamiliar with FAST, its particular work, and how it came to be the driver of this sort of milestone-making research. Can you give us a bit of history here?
Absolutely. FAST was founded in 2008 by an incredible group of people. They were led by Paula Evans and additional super motivated parents who are driven by a singular mission to bring a cure for Angelman syndrome. I have 5 kids, and it's my second child, Grace, who lives with AS, and she just turned 9 years old last week. She was diagnosed when she was 18 months old. I don't think any of us will ever forget that diagnosis day at the neurologist's office, and hearing that my child, your children, would have seizures and no speech and no hope for college, marriage, or independent living. But in our case, it was my wife and I and an invite from a local friend to the 2015 FAST Gala that really changed our lives. It was at this event we heard more life-changing news for Grace, that FAST was working on a cure for Angelman syndrome. And it's been an honor to be a FAST director working on the same mission since that gala back in 2015.
I think it's been, for me, it was the same experience, a similar experience, and understanding that there were people who would say the word treatment or say the words cure was revelatory. Can we move on to GeneTx 102? It would be helpful for me, and I think some of our community, if you told us why FAST started GeneTx, and how the community should come to understand the implications of its acquisition this week.
Absolutely. So FAST started GeneTx in 2018 to ensure the development of a specific treatment that showed much promise, GeneTx 102. GeneTx 102 moved forward in the most expedient manner possible, with the goal of reaching human clinical trials. We were so fortunate soon after to partner with Ultragenics, which invested in the company. In February of 2020, the human clinical trial was initiated, making this fastback program the very first potential gene-modifying therapy for human clinical trials for Angelman syndrome. Just yesterday, Ultragenics exercised its exclusive option and closed on the acquisition of GeneTx, and will now take over the GeneTx 102 program.
Got it. So do you know anything about Ultragenics' reasons for acquiring the company?
Absolutely. In the Ultragenics press release yesterday, the company said, and I'll quote, interim results on 9 patients from the UK-Canadian arm and 2 patients from the US arm of the phase 1/2 study demonstrate a meaningful improvement in clinical disease and an acceptable safety profile.
we're gonna share the link to Ultragenics's press release so people can read it directly for themselves. It's not a, it's a meaty press release. So people may want to see it. Hopefully we can share it in the chat. And so what now, John?
Well, as a parent, as a director at FAST, what an incredibly encouraging message. With the proceeds from this sale, FAST is able to pledge millions of additional dollars to supercharge multiple pathways and promising programs. And in the process, enrich the entire landscape of Angelman syndrome related research. You know, what happened today is exactly why FAST was founded. It's why we started GeneTx, and it's why we, including my wife and I, donate and fundraise, which is to discover and accelerate promising therapies for Angelman syndrome.
Thank you so much. Is there anything else
Well,
you want to say about, yeah.
I would love to say thank you. Since starting this journey with all of you, FAST has gained so much ground, and our momentum continues to grow. Clinical studies are underway and innovative partnerships have been forged, and none of this would have been possible without your contributions, your time, your persistence, and your dollars, which have brought us to this very exciting moment, and will continue to drive us forward. There are no words to fully express our deep gratitude to you and to everyone in the Angelman syndrome community, except thank you so very much.
Thank you, John. I'm going to be asking questions throughout, and I'm going to try to take questions from the chat. But if anybody has questions about FAST or FAST history or its current work, I just want to, I'll say this a few times throughout the course of the Zoom, but please write to us at info@cureangelman.org. Any question about FAST, would be happy to answer. I am going to now turn to Jessica Riviere. Jessica is Vice President, again, of Global Patient Advocacy and Patient Engagement at Ultragenics. We thought we had a busy week, but Jessica's week was, I think, maybe even busier than ours. Jessica, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. We're really grateful.
Happy to be here.
Great. Can you, before we get into Angelman specific news, can you tell us about Ultragenics, the company?
Sure. So thank you for allowing me to join really on this very momentous occasion, and just want to say I've worked in industry for many years, and this day is an anomaly across the industry. Things like this are not the norm. So you are members of a not a community that you would have chosen, but now that you're in it, you're in an incredibly special and dedicated community. And I work with lots of different disease communities. So first want to say, wow. And when John said, thank you for your time and persistence and dollars, we don't need the dollars, but we will continue to need your time and persistence. So let me tell you a little bit about Ultragenics. We are a biotech company. Our headquarters are in California. We're 1,200 people strong. We are 12 years old, and we were founded and continue to be led by a physician by the name of Emil Kakkis. If you've been in the rare disease space, he's kind of like the godfather of rare disease. I'm not sure he'd want me to call him that, but I'm going to call him that. And he is not only kind of a visionary scientist and physician, he is a rabble rouser. So not just on the science, but on the regulatory environment, he is constantly challenging himself and us as a company to, scale greater heights and make all things possible. And so this is an exciting day for us as well. We are not an Angelman syndrome company per se. We're a rare disease and ultra rare disease. We have 3 marketed therapies and a variety of different rare diseases currently on the market. And when we say ultra rare, there aren't many companies today that would have a therapy that they would commercialize where there's literally less than 100 people in the world that have the condition. So we like to think of ourselves as different. We're relentless. We're very collaborative, and really excited to be part of the Angelman community and see where this journey takes us. And we have tremendous hope that we will get to the finish line. It won't be without challenges. Drug development is a kind of a chutes and ladders game some days, but we are really excited to move forward.
Thank you so much. So about this specific acquisition, can you tell us why Ultragenics decided to exercise its option to acquire the company early?
So I think it's really data driven, to be honest with you. And I'm not going to go into the specifics of the data, but the data is compelling. And we feel like we have great success in getting, taking an asset like this where it is currently and taking it to the both meeting the needs from a clinical development perspective, but also we're in a very difficult regulatory environment. So we feel like we have those skills to help move this asset forward. And we have, the resources and the team. GeneTx has done an incredible job, no doubt about it. Huge kudos to Allyson, who I think has 5 jobs and maybe sleeps 20 minutes a night. I don't know. Mainlines Diet Coke or something, but this
Mountain
is an
Dew.
yeah, Mountain Dew. Okay. This is an unusual environment that we've been working in, and so that's really, we felt like the data looked pretty promising, and we thought that we could take it to the next level.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit, do you have any plans for how to engage the AS community moving forward?
Oh, we have many plans.
Can you give us a window into any of them?
Yeah, a partnership is kind of a cornerstone for us. I don't know for any of you that look at other biotech companies, there's a lot of discussion these days about being patient-centric and patient-focused, and patients are at the center of everything we do. And that's kind of a hot buzzword and phrase for people to use. For us, it's how do you actually make that real? And are you actually walking the talk? And so for us, moving forward, it's really working with the community to understand and partner on a whole host of different things, whether that's reviewing the protocol for the phase 3 trial, it's understanding the endpoints, what are the benefits and risks that you're willing to trade off, and really bringing the diversity of experience that all of you have. And all of you have different experience, and the experience of living with Angelman may culturally be different in France than it is in Texas, than it is in Brazil. And we need to understand all of those nuances because that really helps drive and ensure that the therapy that we're trying to develop actually responds to something that you've prioritized, that you think in your daily existence, in your child's existence, is going to be transformative. And so that's why partnership for us is really understanding at many, many different junctures. And it's not just in the clinical development space. Should this therapy get approved, then we have to climb the hurdle around access. And how do we ensure that the Aetnas and the United Healthcares and the Blue Cross Blue Shield and the country of France want to cover this and see the value of therapy for Angelman. So there's so many different aspects in which the community, we're going to need the community to engage. on a public policy perspective, newborn screening is a key challenge, and that is not something that happens in a 12-month period. I worked in SMA. It was 5 years for them to get newborn screening in every state in the United States. So it's really think about Angelman as part of a broader landscape of which there are many different aspects that we're going to need to partner. What are the kind of materials that you think need to be out there in the community? What are those gaps? I spoke to Amelia Beatty this morning, your global lead who's in Jordan, and we're talking about translation and how do we ensure that people around the world have access to materials and information that aren't just in English. So it's such a myriad of things, but we really pride ourselves in sitting down, asking questions, and then really listening, and then asking more questions, and really helping that drive our internal decision making, to be honest.
Speaking as a parent, I have to say it's just so, I don't even know what the feeling is listening to you speak, and the engagement that you are talking about feels like it feels so hopeful. And so exhilarating, really. I don't think maybe I'm speaking only for myself, but I suspect I'm not. Jessica, I know that you've had an incredibly busy week, and I just want to say thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure that everyone's
happy
people are going to have a million questions for you, I'm sure, in the coming weeks. And as we've said, this is the first step in a journey. So we'll try to keep communication open in all directions. But for now, this is an amazing window that you've given us into Ultragenics, and we're so grateful for it.
So there are a couple of websites, and I think I've sent them to John, and I'll make sure that all of you get them. There are a couple of things that might be helpful to the community. We have a patient advocacy website at Ultragenics. It's called Ultra Rare at ultragenics.com. There are patient stories, there's resources on public policy. It introduces the patient advocacy and patient engagement team. I have a team that is both in Europe and in Latin America and across the US and Canada. It introduces kind of the principles by which we operate from an advocacy and patient engagement perspective. If some of you want to go and read the slides that were presented yesterday on the investor call about the science, you can go to ultragenics.com and you can read those. Good luck in interpreting those, but if you want that level of engagement, if you have questions about trial recruitment, we have trial recruitment at ultragenics.com. So there's lots of different avenues in which for you to reach one of us, and really want to make sure that people know how to contact us, how to get more information, and really make that accessible to people.
So what we just put this, the second link to the Ultragenics, to the slides, to the full slides, if anybody wants to take a look at it. And maybe in the next few minutes, we can find the Ultra Rare site while we have everyone, and put the link to that in the chat too.
And in fact, if you go to our corporate website, the opening picture is Mason, who is a 6-year-old living with Angelman's. His dad actually came and spoke to our employees a couple of weeks ago. So we are excited to learn more from the community, but you will see Mason featured pretty prominently.
Great, terrific. Thank you so much, Jessica. Before we continue, I do want to note some questions. We've been getting questions kind of as a fire hose, and some of them where we can't answer, we're not the right address for. FAST, for example, has never run a clinical trial, so many of the questions that are specific about the trial, either in the past or in the future, we can't answer. But what we can do is we can answer the questions that we can answer, or we can direct you. We can try our best to direct you to the best address for those questions. Some of the questions we've received include, for example, what is the plan to extend the clinical trial to UPD, ICD, mutation, missense, truncation, mosaic? Will there be any age restrictions? How many more patients do we think might be enrolled in the near future? Do you plan to enroll more patients in the UK? Another person wrote in and said, I'm sure I'm not the only one wondering about the impact the sale could potentially have on the affordability of therapeutics for families. If you want to add your questions to the list of ones that we are going to try to find answers for or direct people to, send them. I'm going to try my best to lasso questions into our conversation today, but if I don't get to yours, send it please to info@cureangelman.org, and we'll do our best to route it to the right address.
And let me just also add, in the very near future, we will have a town hall where Emil will be, and he and I will be hosting a town hall where he will actually speak to the science and what our plans are for the future. And we will, I'm not trying not to be transparent here. I'm just not qualified to talk about cohort 5 versus cohort, that's not my skill set. And so, but you do have our commitment that we will, on multiple occasions moving forward, ensure that the community has access to what our plans are, and ensure that people know where to get more information and all of that. So that it's not that we're not trying to do that today, but this isn't the right forum for those discussions.
Thank you so much. Okay, now we're on to Allyson, who is, again, Chief Science Officer of FAST and one of the driving engines behind the organization's efforts in this space. Allyson, I know I'm particularly grateful to you, and I'm so glad to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Alana. I think the best place for me to start is by saying that I promised I was not going to get emotional because it's hard for me not to. But I just saw John choke up, which makes it really, really hard for me because this is a moment, I know you're sorry, but this is a moment that is something we've been waiting for a really long time. Our whole community has been waiting for this. And it's not just Ultragenics and this news, which is amazing, but it's also just the fact that there's momentum and we're moving forward for all of our children and adults that are out there living with Angelman syndrome. So I need to start by just thanking so many people that allowed our entire community to get here. We received so much outreach and excitement from so many of you in the last 24 hours that we are so touched and humbled. It is really beyond emotional, deeply. This is the work of so many, and most importantly, our community, who allowed us to really reach each of these stepping stones along the way. And I'm honored and humbled to be such a part of many of the legs of this relay race. Really, that's what it's been. But this was built on so much and took an entire city, not just a village. So I need to thank you all for being so supportive and such a huge part of this. We're just the ones sharing the information, but we're not the only ones that did it. We know there's a long road ahead of us before our mission is reached, but we're not going to stop until we get there. And that I just want to promise you all.
Thank you. Before we go any further, would you mind just introducing yourself? Tell us how you came to join the board of FAST.
Oh, sorry, I probably should have started there. Okay, so a little bit about me. My name is Allyson Berent, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm the mother to a beautiful little girl. Her name is Quincy, and she lives with Angelman syndrome. I'm not going to go through our roadmap of her diagnosis because certainly it's as emotional as John's, but she was diagnosed actually when she was 6 months old. And a year after her diagnosis in 2015, I was humbled enough to be asked to join the board of directors at FAST. And in 2016, again, a really humbling experience to be asked to become the chief science officer for the foundation. In my day job, I focus on translational research. So I'm a clinical researcher myself, and I've worked for over 15 years developing medical devices for animals with naturally occurring disease. I'm a veterinarian. I'm a veterinary internist and interventional radiologist. And I solve problems in animals where there's really not great solutions, with an ultimate goal for those devices to be translated into the pediatric population, the human population, where there's a huge clinical unmet need. So when I joined the board of FAST, I was able to really try to use this skill set and work closely with our incredible research team to put together a very clear research plan, which we called a roadmap to a cure, and an effort to really bring together the lead scientists from around the world to further all of their technologies and really to move from bench side to bedside, which is the definition of translational research. And so I think a little history is important to really understand that. And it was the incredible work of so many people. We had a team of scientists working really collaboratively since 2013, well ahead of my time at FAST, who saw the mission of FAST. This was the FAST Fire team. And so I really do feel we need to acknowledge very deeply Dr. Ed Weber and Scott Dindo, David Siegel, Ann Anderson, and Kevin Nash, who really got together and got out of their silo and worked to support all shots on goal, which has been our motto. FAST was focused on truly understanding the steps it would take to get from a promising therapeutic, potentially in an animal model, to really a human drug candidate for each strategy that had promise. And FAST was focused to take each step in order to advance each program toward human clinical trials. That was really our goal. And we focused on this milestone to reach go and no-go decisions.
Tell us, how did you pull the thread? How did you get from strategy to practical steps?
It was really a huge collaborative effort, bringing in the right people at the right time. And it really, our stars aligned, they totally aligned. In 2016, I think I should start to answer with that. I was actually blessed to meet an incredible father of a child with Angelman syndrome, which was a few years older than my daughter. And we were very like-minded. We became very fast social media friends, which is where our community lives. So we certainly started chatting on social media and chatting, more in private groups. And he came to New York from London and he asked me to lunch. And so I got to meet him and his wife as had lunch with our family and my husband. And it was one of the best lunches of my life. And I think one of the best lunches of the life of our entire community. He asked a single question, and that was, what is FAST's true plan to cure Angelman syndrome? And I shared with him our fresh off the press roadmap to a cure. And he asked the price, and we had really come up with a plan, and it was $5.8 million just to get started, to be able to get to those go and no-go decisions and advance multiple disease modifying therapies through the proof of concept required to get to these go and no-go decisions for human candidate. And that was only the first step, but it was our first goal. And we needed to get there, and it was the largest ask of our lives. And he was certainly inspired by our ambition and the possibility of FAST roadmap, and also the FIRE team that had helped put this roadmap together. And this father brought together his entire family to meet the FAST FIRE team and to hear about our vision. And this was the impetus to the Manier Lapostale Foundation donating $5.8 million to ignite incredible progress to reach this first step of our roadmap. Numerous programs were being advanced through this, and there was so much hope for the future for our loved ones living with Angelman syndrome. And one of the first programs that had a go decision was that of Dr. Scott Dindo at Texas A&M University, for which I will be forever grateful. He was working to really discover a unique region on the antisense transcript, which, as all of you probably on the call know, is the part on the father's copy of the gene that silences the UBE3A gene. And so he was working on an understanding of that region to try to unsilence it, to potentially turn it on and then potentially activate that gene. And so this is the discovery that led to launching GeneTx Biotherapeutics and to take that next step. And we had a go decision in that first 6 months of this grant. And I was lucky enough to serve as the co-founder of GeneTx and the chief operating officer of the company for the past 4.5 years.
One of the early insights, which was effective for me, and which I think started to drive all of FAST's work from early on, was the idea that successful treatments are almost never discovered on their own, that it's a team of people doing collaborative work, but that the more efforts underway in a given field, the more diverse, the more likely we would be to find truly effective therapeutics. And I think we have a graphic maybe to share, but Allyson, can you talk about whether we can have that graphic or not, can you talk a little bit about the idea of why we need multiple shots on goal?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a graphic that I share, every year at our FAST Science Summit, just to really explain to the community the visual of how complicated drug development can be and how much it takes. So really, in order to get a single approved drug, we have to start with potentially thousands of initial options. And we can't just put all our eggs in one basket. We really have to investigate from early on numerous options in order to see what pans out to get to proof of concept, not only in animal models, but then to humans, and not only in humans, but then through some of the studies it takes for regulatory agencies, and then from regulatory agency approvals, getting through the clinical trials, and then from those clinical trials, getting to a final approval. And there's data to support you need thousands of options to get to a single approved drug. And given our understanding of this, we really had to put this into practice. So early funding, really that was supported by our incredible Angelman community, which we need to give full credit to, went to the support of dozens of scientific programs, which were discovered by numerous scientific heroes in our field. And that work was and continues to be really the foundation for so much of the early progress made in Angelman syndrome research. And it has been an incredible team that has been working together vigorously to meet the mission of FAST in order to accelerate numerous programs and numerous shots on goal. And until we see each of these promising approaches in patients, we actually do not know which will have the greatest impact to different individuals of different ages, of different genotypes. So we don't want to put all of our eggs into a single basket, and we've committed to never do that. We must commit to fund all shots on goal to ensure that we really have all options available for our entire community, and let humans determine what works best for those individuals. Trials will tell us what is best, and it really supports that we can't stop until we can see how these drugs behave in our human patients, not just how they behave in mice.
I think that as a parent and a relative outsider until recently, the idea that that you might need multiple treatments because we have 6-month-olds and we have people who are adults, and every phenotype in between. This idea, I think, was new to me, and so it's useful to me to hear you underscore it. Can you tell us a little bit about what this sale is going to mean for FAST and for the Angelman syndrome community as a whole?
Sure, that's a big question, and I think I should start by just saying it's tremendous. FAST itself is now able to pledge a significant amount of funds to be used directly to accelerate numerous pathways and promising programs that we've been talking about for so many years, and in the process enrich the landscape of Angelman syndrome related therapeutic research. I mean, that is really what it's all about, and that's exactly where we've been trying to go since I joined the organization and well before my time. Over the past few months, numerous programs in biotech have been paused or shelved or even canceled. And most of that has been due to reprioritization of programs and clearly tumultuous financial markets. And so a trend that could really derail potentially promising Angelman syndrome programs from being advanced, and not because of bad science or because the therapeutic doesn't look like it has promise or has a go or has a no-go decision, but actually from external influences that just wind up adjusting priorities. And with FAST now able to focus on acceleration and progress, we can lend support to advance a host of promising opportunities and ensure that every promising program continues to move forward. So we have every shot on goal to meet our mission, and we're not paused based off of external reasons, but we actually can really be fiduciarily responsible for funds that are going to go into the pipeline and the programs that we need to advance.
That leads me to another question which we've been asked this afternoon, which is why should a parent continue to raise funds for FAST now that the organization's received the proceeds from this transaction?
Well, again, I think the short answer to that question is we're just not there yet. The platforms currently being pursued and advanced through all of the donations that have come through to FAST include multiple different strategies, multiple different
Can you tell us some of those? Would you?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, we have multiple different AAV gene therapy approaches. We have a hematopoietic stem cell gene therapy approach, an enzyme replacement therapy, CRISPR technology, miRNA program. Here's the
great.
the roadmap, which I think is our pipeline, which is so helpful. FAST has never really stopped its efforts, and we have some new and early discoveries as well that we're just learning about, in the last few months that we really want to accelerate and push. And FAST has never stopped its efforts to help push every promising program closer to human clinical trials in order to ensure that not a single stone is left unturned, like I've always said. And you can really see what I mean on this map of all of the programs, but until we cross the final orange line, we're just not there yet. And we've really always focused on different points, getting to IND enabling studies, the blue rectangle, and then getting through IND enabling studies, and then getting to the green and getting into human clinical trials. But when we look at a budget to get to clinical trials alone for all of the promising programs, we can just do the math. Each program from proof of concept through an early phase clinical trial, so just those early green colors, can cost upwards of $20 to $30 million, depending on the modality. To truly advance all shots on goal, we really, honestly, need to raise closer to $200 million. And that's just to ensure we're always capable of advancing promising programs from benchside to bedside, not through the entire process. But that's the mission of FAST, is to get it to human clinical trials and ensure that we can prove what is best for all individuals living with Angelman, which may be many things, and we'll always support all of them.
Can I just add something just to give people a context?
Please.
There's over 10,000 rare diseases, of which only 600 have a therapy. And I said A as in one, that may not be, that's not a cure, that's maybe disease modifying. It is very unusual to have in a rare disease multiple different mechanisms of actions and shots on goal. In most rare diseases, even having somebody study the disease is considered an advance. So you are living in a world, I know there's a tremendous sense of urgency, but this is an embarrassment of riches. This is not the norm. What you guys have created, this is not how it's working in most other disease areas that are rare. And so just to give you that context, most rare diseases have one company and that's it. And they're putting everything they have at that, hoping that that crosses the finish line. And many of them don't. So just to give you the context, this is an excellent strategy to look at lots of different opportunities, because at this point, there is no cure. And so how do you look at all kinds of different mechanisms of actions, the tremendous heterogeneity in the disease. So this is very unusual. I just wanted to give you that context, because if we went to the Wilson's disease community today, they don't have anything like this, where they've got multiple companies investing in Wilson's disease, trying to figure out how to make that living with Wilson's disease a more manageable disease. So I just wanted to give that shout out to Allyson, because this really is quite unusual.
Thanks. I mean, that's great, Jessica. And I think, don't give the shout out to me. Certainly this took a village, and this is not me. I'm here representing the foundation and the work of so many before us, and you guys and so many other pharma companies and so many after us. But ultimately, it is our responsibility to support everybody and to support every existing program and allow them to advance, because we can, and we have the option to be the disease that potentially sees that transformation, and we can't rely on one program to do that. So advancing our own academic programs and ensuring that we find the best partnerships, like we did with Ultragenics when the time is right, is what's incredibly important to FAST. And it is to our entire community, and we're just fiduciaries of what we committed to do for this community. Because really, our top priority as an advocacy organization is to fund the critical research and help to find meaningful treatments for Angelman syndrome. And we share that goal with so many stakeholders across everyone, pharmaceutical, research institutions, and of course, our Angelman syndrome community. So really, as before, we'll continue to support everyone and anyone with a chance to make this happen. And we'll not stop at clinical trials, which is the focus right now. But trials only treat handfuls of patients. We need to ensure that we can advance to a place where we find all patients around the globe that might want meaningful therapies, diagnose patients as early as possible. To your point, Jessica, about newborn screening, we are already heavily invested in newborn screening in partnerships with the Angelman Syndrome Foundation and others, advancing endpoints so that we know how to best measure meaningful change, work with payers to understand the economic burden of disease. And this will pave the way to help get therapies to all individuals around the world living with Angelman syndrome. We want to help everyone do that as quickly and as safely as possible. So a few years ago, we did say, can't stop and won't stop, and this still stands. We're not in a position to stop, and we won't be until every single patient around the world that wants a treatment sees one, and it's transformative. And that's what FAST is all about.
I know that all of you are very busy, and I am so grateful for you taking the time. I'm also mindful of the likely parent schedules of everyone in our audience. And I just want, if anybody has any final points before we sign off, just for today. I know this is only the start of our conversations with everyone and with each other. But if anybody has any final points, now is the moment. Anybody have any last things they want to note? John, do you have anything you want to say on behalf of FAST before we let everybody go for the evening? Only for this evening, we're letting you go.
Absolutely. Jessica, thank you. Thank you, Emil, and the entire incredible team at Ultragenics. What a great partner to move this promising program forward. Thank you again from the very inception of FAST, all the board members together with Paula leading the way. Just beautiful for it to all coalesce here today. This is what it's all about, and we have so much more in store.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
And again, just one last thing. If anybody has any questions, we will do our best to try to either answer them or direct them to the right place. So once again, it is info@cureangelman.org. Send us any question. We are monitoring that email, that inbox by the minute. So send us anything, any questions or any comments, and we'll try to get back to you. But for now, I want to thank all three of our wonderful panelists, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.